The last government shutdown, the longest in recent history, started a few days before Christmas 2018, ended on January 25th, 2019. It doesn't appear Congress learned anything from that one, but can we?
Like, what effect does a government shutdown have on our economy? Joining us is ABC News contributor Caleb Silver, editor-in-chief of Investopedia. Caleb, are we right to assume that the longer a shutdown lasts, the bigger the impact?
Absolutely. Total correlation there between the duration and the depth of the shutdown, how many government agencies are shut down, how many employees are furloughed, and then the domino effect of all the private contractors that do business with some of these agencies. They may have to pause projects, they may have to furlough employees or lay them off. So this definitely leads to a slowdown in GDP, but also a rise in unemployment and another blow to consumer confidence, which is at multi-month lows.
So what industries in our economy does a government shutdown affect the most?
Well, right now it's going to affect sort of the non-essential part. So you'll see, visitor centers at parks and monuments closed. You'll see a furloughing of government employees, as many as 750,000 per day. We got about 2.3 million government employees out there, and that means they may miss a paycheck. The next pay period comes up in a couple of weeks. A lot of these folks are living paycheck to paycheck, federal employees. They miss one paycheck, it hurts. They miss two. If this goes on for a while, it really hurts. So it's a blow to spending. It's a potential blow to folks who are receiving SNAP benefits and WIC benefits. That's mothers and infants. So people who depend on a lot of these social services are going to be impacted the most.
And, regular Americans, how do we see this, if we're just sort of going about our daily business rattling through the economy?
Yeah, if you are not a government employee that's being impacted by this, you might not feel it today. You might not feel it in a week, but you'll start to feel it over the next few weeks if this goes on for a while and we see potentially more government agencies closed. Also, we won't get economic data, for example, from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We might not get the jobs report on Friday or the inflation report in a couple of weeks, and then the Federal Reserve meets at the end of this month to decide on interest rates. If it lowers interest rates, that impacts a lot of Americans. So the Federal Reserve potentially flying blind without data from the most recent jobs report, but also this lack of confidence and this blow to spending, that's what really slows down the economy and puts people on edge.
And this actually ends up costing us more in the long run because we're having to make up for the back pay and those sorts of things, right?
Yeah, furloughed employees do get back pay, and that's great. But if you miss a paycheck, as I said, and you're living paycheck to paycheck, that really hurts your household. That really messes up your family finances. And again, if you miss a couple of those, and then we have other potential agencies that might furlough employees, and then the private contractors who might get furloughed, that starts to have a real domino effect on confidence, on spending, and ultimately gross domestic product. The last government shutdown in 2018, that costed about 0.5% of GDP. Now, we don't feel that on a day-to-day basis, but ultimately a slowdown in the economy hurts everyone.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot. That is Caleb Silver, ABC News contributor and editor-in-chief of Investopedia. It's interesting, LaDonna, we were talking about trying to have the superintendent of Grand Canyon National Park on this morning, because they were supposed to reopen a bunch of stuff this morning
at the North Rim after
the fires that were up there. And then that was the first thing I thought of when I walked in this morning and I saw Patrick, our producer. I was like, you know what? I guess it made sense that we didn't actually get him on the air because he wouldn't have had anything to talk about opening.
He's not at work today.
Yeah. Well,
well, he may be at work.
Yeah.
But he's probably not doing a whole lot. I mean, it's, this kind of thing rattles through the economy. And as Caleb said, from the last government shutdown, I remember it very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And it was months that this affected our economy moving forward, because it's just kind of a slow roll through it just rattles everything and everybody.
I remember talking about that when it happened. It's like, oh, wow, here's Congress's Christmas present.
Right. And Congress continues to get paid.
Yeah.
The military doesn't, but Congress does.
Right. But the military has to show up.
Right. Congress doesn't.
Exactly.
Congress doesn't have to do anything.
Exactly.
Sharper Point Commentary.
Holy heck! The federal government shutdown actually happened. Scary enough that I busted out Fugue and D minor 4 weeks before Halloween. Or is it all that scary? I mean, with the sky, could that fall without the government keeping it up there? No, but even though it really only means about 19% of the federal workforce not showing up to their office or national park or showing up to mow the grass at your local Bureau of Reclamation dam, and as much as I like a small government, this is not a good thing for Republicans, Democrats, independents, or even people who pay zero attention to politics. Because there are people who protect our borders, our nation, our food, and do the other really essential parts of the government's work, like air traffic controllers and members of the U.S. military that will have to show up and then have to wait to get paid. Although it's always happened in shutdowns of the past, it ends up costing us taxpayers more money in the long run. And today's shutdown is the first one in almost 7 years. The last government shutdown, the longest in recent history, started a few days before Christmas 2018, Merry Christmas, and ended on January 25th, 2019. It doesn't appear to have helped Congress learn anything, however. And here's Caleb Silver. He's editor-in-chief of Investopedia, talking about what a longer shutdown does to our economy. Is the longer that it's around mean it's the worse it's going to be for us?
Total correlation there between the duration and the depths of the shutdown, how many government agencies are shut down, how many employees are furloughed, and then the domino effect of all the private contractors that do business with some of these agencies. They may have to pause projects, they may have to furlough employees or lay them off. So this definitely leads to a slowdown in GDP, but also a rise in unemployment and another blow to consumer confidence, which is at multi-month lows.
Which puts President Trump even further away from his biggest campaign promise to fix the economy that Joe Biden left him. So I don't know why he wouldn't tell, Johnson and Schumer and everybody to show up and go, I'm getting the deal done. That's his deal, right? He's a deal maker. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation just completed a survey on the things that Americans agree on. And if you based your conclusions on that by simply looking at Congress, you'd think there's nothing we agree on. But 78% say they're worried rising costs will drive long-term residents to leave their communities. The same research shows most people value the same things, including feeling safe, financially secure, having access to proper health care. If you look at the news, though, you'd think we're further apart than ever before. And that's the fault of social media, us in the traditional media and politicians. They make it difficult to see that we actually have a lot of common ground, as Dr. Lauren Smith, vice president with that Robert Wood Foundation, told us about yesterday.
People recognize that the constant stream of divisive politics and the kind of social media algorithms that fuel that kind of division can make it seem like there's no common ground and can make it seem like our shared challenges are impossible to solve. But when people had the opportunity to sit with folks that were different from them, from different backgrounds, they really came to several conclusions. One is that they're facing many of the same challenges, and they want the same things in their communities.
Yeah, we are all the same. We're in that same boat. And I have an idea to make sure that Congress is all in the same boat to avoid future shutdowns. I think the first piece of legislation they take up once the shutdown's over is that Congress doesn't get paid when the government shuts down. Yeah. That way, the next shutdown will last about 38 seconds.
Thanks for watching Arizona's Morning News. Click to watch more from KTAR News and hit the button in the middle to subscribe.